Hello, my name is Serge Moungnanou, Advocacy Specialist at AfricaNenda Foundation. Today, we are exploring how digital payment infrastructure can become a genuine engine for gender equity. This session unpacks the gender-responsive framework for instant payment systems, a framework that, when designed intentionally, unlocks the economic power for every woman everywhere. What to expect? We will provide context, review research methods, define the framework, examine Africa's gender-responsive dynamics in inclusive instant payment systems, and illuminate actionable principles and recommendations you can take away now. To start off, let's explore why the topic matters. Despite global progress in account ownership, up from 23% in 2011 to 49% in 2024, an 11-point gender gap persists in sub-Saharan Africa. Only 37% of women hold accounts versus 48% of men. Under the current progress rates, gender parity is still 123 years away. The stakes for growth and resilience and equality are enormous. Women face a tangle of interconnected barriers: biased product design, legal and regulatory hurdles, cultural constraints, technology gaps, literacy limitations, and economic disparities. Tackling one barrier is not enough. This is a systemic challenge demanding comprehensive solutions. When we talk about the need for the digital financial services ecosystem redesign, there's the opportunity to boost instant payment systems as the infrastructure necessary for inclusive financial ecosystems. And this is where we see the gender responsiveness really matters. When women can access digital finance, it directly boosts their safety, independence, and economic resilience. Gender-responsive systems actively address the real-world barriers women face. They unlock pathways not just for formal credit or government payments, but for full participation in economic and social life. The gender-responsive IPS framework provides a structured approach for understanding and addressing gender-related disparities within digital payments. It guides instant payment system operators in systematically integrating gender considerations, thereby facilitating inclusive growth and financial equity for women. Developed with insights from IPS operators, regulators, end users, and industry experts, the framework serves three primary purposes. First, defining the gender intentionality spectrum. This involves establishing clear distinctions between gender-neutral, gender-intentional, and gender-transformative approaches to payment system design and implementation. Second, outlining assessment criteria. It provides structured self-evaluation criteria for IPS operators to determine their current position on the gender intentionality spectrum. Each criterion is a key IPS design principle adapted to better meet women's needs and preferences. Third, offering implementation pathways. The framework presents practical guidance for IPS design and implementation that progressively enhances gender inclusion, addresses barriers women face, and facilitates their economic agency, empowerment, and resilience. By applying this framework, IPS operators can systematically improve women's participation in digital payment ecosystems, leading to both commercial advantages and broader socio-economic benefits. Let us now appreciate the research methodology for the gender-responsive framework. In this research, we set out to answer some key questions. First, Define and contextualize the concepts of gender neutrality, gender intentionality, and gender transformation in the context of instant payment systems. This aims to build a foundational understanding of these gender-related concepts and how they apply specifically to the field of IPS. Second, investigate how the integration of gender responsiveness into IPS design can address women's unique needs and constraints. For this objective, we seek to explore practical applications of gender responsiveness in IPS design, with a focus on how such applications can meet the specific needs and address the challenges faced by women. Thirdly, identify the key prerequisites in IPS design and implementation that could accelerate women's adoption and use of digital payments. This objective is focused on pinpointing crucial elements and conditions in the design and implementation of IIPS that could promote faster and broader adoption of digital payments by women. Our research utilized a mixed methods research approach. The research methods included desktop research, documentation review, and user surveys, focus group discussions, and in-depth key informant interviews. The research was conducted in 5 countries, Egypt, Cameroon, Mauritius, Nigeria, and Zimbabwe, that have implemented instant payment systems at different inclusivity levels. Mauritius, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and Cameroon have been classified as progressed on AfricaNenda's inclusivity spectrum and are similarly rated on the World Bank's Findex financial inclusion status. Egypt was not ranked on AfricaNenda's inclusivity spectrum, but it was classified as progressed in the World Bank's Findex financial inclusion status. These countries represent North, East, West, Southern, and Central Africa, showcasing the continent's diverse regulatory frameworks, market conditions, and cultural contexts. Let's explore now what do we mean by gender-responsive framework. Our framework defines a spectrum for designing gender-responsive inclusive instant payment systems. Gender neutral. It means no specific, no explicit gender considerations. Systems treat all users the same way and can unintentionally reinforce gaps. Gender intentional IPS design and implement deliberate features and policies to meet women's distinct needs using evidence, sex disaggregated data, and targeted interventions. When it comes to gender transformative IPS, they go beyond access to actively empower women, challenge harmful norms, and build lasting agency across the ecosystem. Now, let's explore the instant payment system design principles to address women's needs. As a starting point, several levels of impact were defined so as to systematically gauge the gender-based impact of each principle. Here, we summarized the levels of impact and how the gender-based impact level for the principles was determined. No clear impact means a scenario where a clear pattern could not be established from the survey data on the impact on women and men. The equal impact on women and men means that survey data shows women and men are impacted similarly by the principle's implementation, whether negatively or positively. The greater positive impact on women means data shows the principle has a positive impact on both men and women, but has a more profound impact on women. And finally, greater impact on men means survey data shows a clear positive impact on both men and women, but a larger positive impact on men. With the definitions above in mind, the differential effects of L1P principles on men and women were measured and analyzed. Here, we showcase gender-based impact of L1P principles at a glance. For example, interoperability. Overall, interoperability is expected to have a greater positive impact on women. In fact, it is crucial for women as it removes transaction barriers between different financial systems, expanding their economic reach and reducing dependence on male intermediaries, particularly for rural entrepreneurs and informal market vendors managing multiple payment channels. When it comes to real-time transaction processing, it is expected to have an equal positive impact on women and men. Real-time processing is fundamental to all users as it provides immediate confirmation of transactions, enables better cash flow management, and builds essential trust in digital payment systems. While this research primarily focused on interrogating the L1P principles, several additions have been made to ensure specific requirements highlighted as important to women are included. These include messaging standards, participation, offline payment capabilities, recipient validation, transaction detail confirmation. For example, participation. Overall, encouraging and simplifying participation by a diverse group of service providers is expected to have a greater positive impact on women. Broad participation from diverse providers is transformative for women's financial inclusion, as it connects the formal payment systems with the providers women trust and already use extensively, including savings groups and microfinance institutions that accommodate their unique financial behaviors and preferences. Another example, messaging standards. Overall, utilizing messaging standards which enable enriched information transfer is expected to have a greater positive impact on women. Messaging standards like ISO 20022 are vital for women as they enable the systematic collection of sex disaggregated data within payment systems, creating the foundation for evidence-based policies and financial products specifically designed to address women's unique financial behaviors and barriers. Let us now turn to explore gender-responsive dynamics in inclusive instant payment systems in Africa. Slightly fewer women than men reported experiencing fraud in digital financial services, but women are more likely to reduce or stop usage following fraud incidents. Women show greater willingness than men to increase digital financial services usage if fraud protections improve, particularly in countries like Cameroon, Egypt, and Nigeria. Women's stronger risk aversion often stems from concerns not just for themselves, but also for their families, with elderly women especially worried about fraud involving relatives. Standardized messages reduce complexity in integrations, enhance interoperability, and improve the efficiency of transaction processing. Using internationally recognized standards can also facilitate cross-border payments and future system upgrades, ensuring the IPS remains current and adaptable to evolving financial ecosystem needs. A lower percentage of women than men report network coverage and quality as barriers to digital payment use, but both are affected by unreliable networks and power cuts. Focus groups and expert interviews highlight that offline payment capabilities are essential for adoption in such contexts. Given the persistent 15% mobile internet gender gap in low and middle income countries, offline payment solutions are likely to have an ever greater positive impact on women, helping to bridge digital financial inclusion gaps. In this final chapter, we will explore the key takeaways from this research, as well as the recommendations. A crucial research finding is that none of the principles have opposing effects on women and men. What positively impacts women is also beneficial for men. The differences lie in the relative value women and men place on each principle or its ultimate outcome from a user perspective. The principles which are expected to have a more positive impact on women than men form the basis for the development of the gender-responsive IPS framework. The framework provides a structured approach for understanding and addressing gender-related disparities within digital payments. It guides IPS operators in systematically integrating gender considerations, thereby facilitating inclusive growth and financial equity for women. Another key finding is the importance of understanding the local context and the needs of women in a specific context. In several instances, while women valued a principle more than men in one country, the relationship was converse in another. For example, a greater percentage of women than men in Egypt would increase DFS usage if transaction fees were lowered. However, a greater percentage of men than women in Zimbabwe would increase DFS usage if transaction fees were lowered. The gender-responsive IPS framework therefore recommends IPS operators invest in collecting gender disaggregated data to gain a clear understanding of the needs of women in their local context. While this research tested the principles in their existing form, the gender-responsive IPS framework provides tailored applications of each principle where relevant to maximize their potential impact on women's inclusion through gender-responsive IPS design and implementation. An instant payment system can deliver fast, low-cost, universally accessible payments, but this baseline, while technically inclusive, often stops short of addressing the unequal barriers faced by women. This research brings clarity to this. Not all IPS design choices create the same impact for women. In gender neutrality, stakeholders assume inclusion will happen just if the rails are open. With gender intentionality, stakeholders purposefully build those rails to be usable, affordable, and safe for women in both urban markets and rural villages. A truly intentional IPS chooses by design those principles rooted in L1P and with high gender impact that were identified in this study. A gender transformative instant payment system contributes far more than by simply closing gaps in digital payments across all usages for women. It actively drives broader systemic change, and by this we mean shifting not just the design of financial services, but also the underlying social, economic, and policy structures that limit women's agency. Building an IPS that genuinely closes gender gaps is not about amassing every principle available, but about zeroing in on those proven by this research anchored in the L1P framework and other report findings. From the set of L1P and additional principles this study analyzed, the following have emerged as having the strongest evidence-based positive impact on women when embedded in IPS design and governance. We talk about all-to-all interoperability, low cost, tiered and remote-friendly KYC, agent network access and proximity, feature phone and offline transaction capability, privacy and safety first user features, and gender disaggregated data collection and feedback. What actions can stakeholders make to build gender-responsive instant payment systems and drive impact on women in Africa? On the part of policymakers and regulators, a few key recommendations would be: mandate gender disaggregated IPS performance reporting, publish data quarterly to create for public accountability, institutionalize risk-appropriate tiered KYC, and enable eKYC regulations to cut onboarding hurdles for women. On the part of IPS operators, there's a need to apply the high-impact principles identified in this study as non-negotiable design standards. There's also the need to develop gender-specific adoption dashboards, which allow, at each user funnel stage, to intervene rapidly where women drop off. And lastly, on the part of IPS participants, there's a need to streamline women-friendly remote onboarding via tiered eKYC and integrate this with local agents and trusted actors. There's a need as well to design for discretion with interfaces that allow privacy, display local language menus, and facilitate error-proof navigation for users with low-tech comfort. We have come to the end of our session. Thank you for your attention. At AfricaNenda Foundation, we believe that instant payment systems should not just be about moving money, but about empowering people. By designing them with courage, we can unlock women's potential and fuel prosperity across Africa. Connect to AfricaNenda Foundation if you are ready to build instant payment systems that change lives. The future of digital finance must include everyone. Thank you.